It would be most unwise to rule out the possibility that the recession may become more serious than already is apparent.
Alan Greenspan was one of the most influential economists and central bankers in modern history. Serving as chairman of the Federal Reserve from 1987 to 2006, he guided the United States through stock market crashes, technological revolutions, globalization, and periods of extraordinary economic growth. His death at the age of 100 has renewed debate over whether he was the architect of prosperity or one of the architects of the financial vulnerabilities that later emerged. Today we examine his life, career, achievements, controversies, and lasting influence on the global economy.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
Who was Alan Greenspan? Alan Greenspan was an American economist who served as chairman of the Federal Reserve for nearly 19 years. He advised multiple U.S. presidents and became one of the most powerful economic policymakers in the world. His decisions on interest rates influenced not only the United States but also global financial markets. What was Alan Greenspan's early life like? Greenspan was born in New York City in 1926. As a young man, he showed exceptional talent in mathematics and statistics. Before entering economics, he studied music and played the saxophone and clarinet. His fascination with numbers and analysis eventually led him toward economics and financial consulting. What role did his family play in his life? Greenspan grew up in a middle-class environment and developed an early interest in finance through his father, who worked in financial services. Later in life, he married journalist Andrea Mitchell, who remained his partner for decades and was by his side throughout his later years. Why was he called the Maestro? Greenspan earned the nickname the Maestro because investors believed his understanding of the economy was unmatched. Financial markets reacted instantly to his speeches, testimony, and even subtle changes in his wording. His influence became so great that a single statement could affect stock prices around the world. What made his tenure at the Federal Reserve unique? Greenspan served 5 terms under 4 different presidents. This level of bipartisan trust was extremely rare. During his leadership, the United States experienced one of the longest periods of economic expansion in its history. How did Greenspan influence global markets? Investors closely monitored every speech and congressional testimony he delivered. Markets attempted to interpret his comments for clues about future interest rate decisions. This gave him enormous influence over investment decisions, borrowing costs, and economic expectations worldwide. What was irrational exuberance? In 1996, Greenspan warned that investors might be showing irrational exuberance in financial markets. The phrase became famous because it suggested stock prices could be disconnected from economic reality. The warning is still remembered as one of the most influential statements ever made by a central banker. How did Ayn Rand influence Greenspan? During his younger years, Greenspan became associated with philosopher Ayn Rand. Her belief in free markets, individual responsibility, and limited government intervention had a significant influence on his economic thinking. These ideas helped shape many of his views on regulation and monetary policy. What was the Great Moderation? The Great Moderation refers to a period from the mid-1980s through the early 2000s characterized by lower inflation, reduced economic volatility, and sustained growth. Greenspan became closely associated with this era because many economists credited his monetary policies with helping maintain stability. Why was the 1990s economy considered extraordinary? The United States experienced strong economic growth, rising productivity, low unemployment, and relatively stable inflation during the 1990s. This combination was unusual because high growth often leads to rising inflation. Greenspan argued that technological innovation and productivity gains were changing the economy. How did the Internet boom affect his legacy? Greenspan recognized that technological advances could increase productivity and support economic growth. This view encouraged investment in technology companies. While many successful innovations emerged during this period, critics argue that excessive optimism also contributed to the dot-com bubble. What was the Greenspan Put? The Greenspan Put was the belief among investors that the Federal Reserve would intervene whenever markets experienced severe declines. This expectation encouraged confidence in financial markets but also led some investors to take greater risks because they believed central banks would provide support during crises. Why did critics blame Greenspan after the financial crisis? Following the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, many economists argued that Greenspan had kept interest rates too low for too long and supported deregulation that allowed excessive risk-taking. Critics claimed these policies helped create housing bubbles and financial instability. Did Greenspan admit mistakes? Yes. During congressional testimony after the financial crisis, he acknowledged that he had overestimated the ability of financial institutions to manage risk responsibly. This admission became one of the most discussed moments of his career. What were the main criticisms of Greenspan throughout his career? Critics argued that he trusted financial markets too much, supported excessive deregulation, allowed asset bubbles to expand, and underestimated systemic risks. Others believed his policies contributed to wealth inequality by increasing the value of stocks and real estate owned by wealthier households. What did supporters say about Greenspan? Supporters credited him with controlling inflation, guiding the economy through major crises, preserving the independence of the Federal Reserve, and helping create one of the longest periods of economic expansion in American history. How did Greenspan influence central banks around the world? Many countries studied the Federal Reserve during his tenure and adopted similar approaches to monetary policy. His emphasis on economic data, inflation control, and central bank independence influenced policymakers across the globe. How has central bank communication changed since Greenspan? Greenspan was famous for using complex and often confusing language. Modern central banks moved in the opposite direction by adopting transparency, detailed forecasts, press conferences, and forward guidance to help markets understand policy decisions more clearly. How does his era compare with the economic environment of 2026? Greenspan's period was marked by globalization, expanding trade, and integrated supply chains. The economic environment of 2026 is characterized by greater geopolitical tensions, protectionist policies, supply chain restructuring, and increased inflation uncertainty. These differences make direct comparisons challenging. Did Greenspan contribute to rising wealth inequality? Some economists argue that low interest rates and asset appreciation increased the value of stocks and real estate, benefiting wealthier households more than others. This remains a subject of debate among researchers and policymakers. What lessons can be learned from Greenspan's career? Markets are powerful but not perfect. Economic stability can encourage excessive risk-taking. Regulation remains important for financial stability. Data should always be allowed to challenge ideology. Communication can influence markets as much as policy itself. Long periods of success can sometimes create hidden vulnerabilities. Was Alan Greenspan the architect of prosperity or fragility? The answer depends on perspective. Supporters view him as a brilliant policymaker who helped deliver growth and stability. Critics view him as a central figure whose policies contributed to financial excesses and later crises. Most historians agree that his legacy contains elements of both achievements and mistakes. What is Alan Greenspan's lasting legacy? Alan Greenspan transformed modern central banking. His influence can still be seen in monetary policy, financial markets, central bank independence, and debates about regulation. Decades after his retirement and now after his death at age 100, economists continue to study his decisions because their effects are still visible throughout the global financial system. Finally, thank you for watching. If you found this analysis informative and valuable, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth historical, economic, and current affairs content. Your support helps us continue creating educational videos for audiences around the world.